So let me ask this, and not to be too controversial here, but what do you guys think about stopping the clock? I've been in a lot of organizations where they'll, and for what it's worth, I am not a stop the clock person. I think it's a measurement of time. There's a you document the time it begins, you document the time it was either resolved or delivered, and
Right.
it's just time is linear, it's not stopped. But there's a lot of organizations that want to stop the clock, frankly, to make it look like they're making the SLA, right?
Right.
Now, what do you guys think about that? Is that a good practice, a bad practice?
I think it's a horrible practice. I think, it's better to deal with the reality of the issue and understand that, hey, you know what, this one just got away from us. We didn't think through it clearly enough because we were panicking. Whatever
Sure.
the excuse is for missing that SLA. But to stop the clock, in my opinion, is defeating it. Then I think you need to sit down and then readjust that SLA. Let's figure it out, because this is clearly going to be a bigger problem. We're working with 3 international companies here, blah, 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 whatever the issue is. There's only one programmer in the whole world that knows how to do this, because as I've been saying for the last 10 years, we need to, sunset this piece of software, right? I've been in those situations where we've had, at a customer site where they had something that was written, believe it or not, by the original owner. And he is not a developer, but it's still working, and they're having those problems. And, it's just scary, because if he dies, this thing is going away. Let's break down and buy something COTS off the shelf and put it in and sunset this thing, for God's sake. But people have their pride. They want to make sure this stuff works. It's worked for 50 years. Why won't it work in the next 50, right? So it's just understanding, and I'm, to your point, just a firm believer in, you don't stop the clock. It's running, and let's just bite the bullet. You know what I mean? The baby's ugly. Let's just admit that.
Yeah,
David,
I think that no answer is going to be the right answer 100% of the time. But in general, I would tend to lean to not stopping the clock and lowering the target number, and just meet it on total time. Don't put the holds and exceptions in if it's, if you're trying to hit 95% or some measure, and you want to put things on hold to be able to get there, and really, 85% is a realistic number based on running time. If we're talking about, percentages of things, or in total time, hours, days, whatever you're using, I would say let the clock run, because that's just one more thing you're tracking, one more thing you're doing that isn't delivering the service. Stopping the clock, starting the clock again, doing the math to calculate what is the real performance on this particular instance. And again, like I said, keeping it simple, you want to keep it as simple as possible, and everything that you do to that to make it, to polish it, and it really does. It adds complexity. It doesn't sound like it's adding complexity, but it adds complexity at the end of the month. The total amount of time you spend managing the service level agreement, you want to try and minimize that.
I think you're spot on. I was going the same place where you went earlier. Was like, you want to keep it simple, right? And now you have to remember, okay, I stopped it. Now I got to remember to start it. Well, did they remember to start it? Now when I'm calculating the time, I have to take out this gap, and I have to do,
absolutely.
I've been there, done that, more than once in my life, in my career. It's not fun, because it's usually me who forgot to restart the clock.
Well, so on a slight tangent from that question, then let's think about it this way: where you're the rather than the provider of the service, you're the consumer of the service, and somebody comes to you and say, "Look, I've made my SLA 100% of the time." Do you believe them?
It may be true for a period of time, but it won't last forever. How long have you been doing this SLA? If they say 10 years, then I'll say maybe it's time to readdress that SLA and make it a little more aggressive. Maybe, right? Because you need that. You need to have something that's pushing you to keep on top of this stuff. And but from my perspective, I believe it, but maybe we just need to look at it right, left, and on top and on bottom, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I believe they believe it, but I think, when you do dig in, you're going to find that there are reasons why maybe what that SLA is that they're hitting 100% of the time has kind of disconnected or deviated from what's really value to the organization. And
Right.
and they're now achieving something that really doesn't add anything to the overall IT service or what the company is in business to produce. Sure. And it's a measure for a measure to keep it 100%, and it's a pretty cool record to have going. Needs to be looked at. It's not out of the question, but it's, people are human, and humans don't do everything at 100%.
Right. Or it's so easy to achieve, right?
Yes.
Maybe it's kind of like a sandbag.
Could be.
Well,
and typically within this there's a channel there that you're looking at, the process chain. And if something breaks here all the time, and they say, well, I've covered. I called them back within 3 days. It's the other guys that didn't do it. So my SLA is still at 100%. No, if you're part of that food chain, which was one of the subsets, you're all part and parcel of it. We have to change that to make sure that if you don't get this from him, then you're in trouble anyway, right? Or it's your bad.
Well, right. And in a financial services company, they're going to ask, well, okay, this is what it cost. You're doing it. You hit it 100% of the time. Okay. Well, okay. How much could you lower your costs if you only did it 85% of the time?
Yeah.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Because
really good.
That might be good enough, right? And
a lot of times, Mark, the cost to get the last 2% to 100% are the marginal costs are incremental. It doesn't, you're not buying anything. You're not getting the value for the money you spend on the last 2 or 5% or whatever.
So that price just goes up
95 might be just good enough. Yeah.
Right. You reach the point of there's a point of diminishing return. Right.
Yes.
All right. Great. Well, I think that was a great conversation.
That was a great question.